This is the second in a little series of videos I'm doing from my one place study about Shackleton's Fold in the new Wortley area of Leeds. In the first video I focused on how to work out where a building or a street that no longer exists used to stand, and particularly when there are very few structural landmarks to help pinpoint its former location. And having now been able to pinpoint exactly where Shackleton's Fold used to be, what I'm trying to do in this video is get to know the area as it was when Shackleton's Fold did stand there. And for that I'll be using historic maps and old photos of the buildings that were around Shackleton's Fold. I'm really lucky in this because there's a brilliant website with actually thousands of historic photos of Leeds, and it's called Leodis. I've used a few of those photographs, and I also used the 1846 tithe map and several Ordnance Survey maps from the National Libraries of Scotland Maps website. At the end of this video there's a slide with details for all of the maps and photos that I used, but obviously it's a video that there's no usable links on there. So if you want to use the links, then you need to visit my accompanying blog post, and there's a link to that in the comments after this video, and all of the links in that will take you to where you need to go. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at the growth. We're going to start by looking at maps and looking at the growth of the area around Shackleton's Fold during its 95 or so years of existence. And the first map that it appears on is the 1846 tithe map. You can see I've highlighted in yellow, just sort of to the right of centre, that's Shackleton's Fold as it was on the tithe map. Now Wortley, this is New Wortley, and Wortley means a clearing where vegetables are grown. That's historically what it meant. And although this is 1846, you can see that there is still a lot of farmland around here, and that the development seems to have not long started. Actually, this is the edge of the township of Wortley, of which New Wortley is part, and just over the boundary you can see the letters LBEC. That's his Holbeck, and that's another township, and that had already, the development was more underway there than it is in New Wortley, so it's really just starting here. But if we just go on 1 year more, just move on to 1847, you'll see Shackleton's Fold is there in the middle, highlighted yellow still, and you see that there has been, in just that 1 year, more development. Now if we move on to 1888, we see that really development is thoroughly underway, and actually from this time onwards, my family members were living in Shackleton's Fold, and they would be right through to the time in round about 1938 when it was emptied of people. People were rehoused, relocated, and my family were there for the whole of this period. So this is 1888. If you just look down at the bottom of this map, there is still a little bit of open space there. So we move on to 1906 and all the open space has gone. Now all of these are back-to-back houses, almost all of them are, and you can tell that, I did say this in my last video for anybody who doesn't really know or can't identify back-to-back houses on a map, but when you see a long terrace of houses and it's got a line running the full length of the terrace down the middle, then that means that they're back-to-backs, and that means that on one side they have the windows and doors looking out on that side, and on the other side it's a completely different dwelling and the windows and doors look out on the other side. So we move on again to 1934, and this really is almost certainly the last map that Shackleton's Fold is on, because not long after that it would be demolished. So what we're going to do now is look at Shackleton's Fold and the area immediately around it, by which I mean only about 50 or 100 yards away, and that's all the photographs that I've got are in that area. So it's like we're going to be walking around the area around Shackleton's Fold. Before we leave this map, I should explain that this, although it now looks very urban, and in 1846 it didn't, this is actually it's less than a mile from what is now Leeds city centre. And the reason for all of this development was the Industrial Revolution and then the ongoing impact of the Industrial Revolution. And you can see grey coloured big buildings which are foundries or mills or factories or works of various kinds. And that's where people were working, and people tended at that time to live fairly close to where they worked. So Holbeck and New Wortley were known as the factory of Leeds, and it was an area characterised by, tall chimneys belching out smoke. So it also wouldn't have been a particularly healthy place to live, particularly when you take into account the railway lines with all those sidings and everything. So it would have been I think probably quite a noisy and quite sort of dirty area, dirty in terms of air pollution and so on, not in terms of the people who live there. So let's have a look and see what it actually looked like. So the photos that I found, the earliest one probably dates from 1911, and the last ones date from 1965, which is actually 25 years after Shackleton's Fold was demolished, but it wasn't redeveloped, so it was just derelict land there. So Shackleton's Fold there's still a gap where it was, and we're just looking at the buildings around it. I don't have a photograph of Shackleton's Fold, and if anybody watching this finds that they do have one, then I would really love to hear from you. I would love to see what it actually looked like. So for all of these photos, I've highlighted in yellow Shackleton's Fold, and then the focus of the image is highlighted in green. I've also used arrows to relate the position of the photographer to the map. So like if you look at the blue one, you see the arrow where the person was standing to take the photo, and at the other end of the long blue line you see where they were on the map, and the same for the orange one. You see the other end of the orange arrow, and you can see where that person was standing. I've also, where necessary, I've rotated the map to fit the view that the photographer was looking at. So on here in green you can see that what we're looking at is something called star maltings, and the large building on the right is Star Maltings, but that's the same building that you see. I've put a couple of arrows. That's the same building on the photograph on the left, the one that butts out onto the road, and then there's a couple of other buildings that are part of the same little complex, and together they are Star Maltings. They're all part of the same thing. So Star Maltings, as you can see, runs alongside the bottom end of Shackleton's Fold. There was a long alleyway. So actually, on the right-hand photograph, where you can see the grass, that's where Shackleton's Fold was. The expanse of grass that you see here is actually greater than the width of Shackleton's Fold. It was a small alleyway, and then really very narrow houses going along there. I have known about this photograph on the right for a long time. It's actually the only photograph that comes up on Leodis if you type in Shackleton's Fold. The rest of them I've had to sort of, just sort of look through, browse through long lists of photographs, looking for what seemed to be what I needed for the area. But when ever since I've seen this photograph, what I've thought was, well, it's so tall, and I knew that Shackleton's Fold ran alongside it, and I was just thinking, well, natural light must have been non-existent. But actually, it wasn't quite as bad as I thought, as this gives the impression. If you look just beyond the big Star Maltings building, you see a lower building with a light-coloured roof. So what we're going to do now is we're going to see that building again. There it is in the middle. So that same photographer has now moved around and is actually looking at the length of Shackleton's Fold, which of course doesn't exist anymore, and looking at that building, and you can see that roughly where the four houses are, the Star Maltings building becomes much lower. So there was natural light into those four houses that were along the long alleyway. If you look at the map, just below, the map is rotated of course, but where it says Sunday School, upside down, Sun School, on this photograph that is no longer there. It has been demolished. You'll see why shortly, and everything on a parallel with that has also gone. So this is just wasteland, and I've said where I think the photographer is standing on the map. Also, what's important in this photograph is the two houses that you see at the back on the right, and I've highlighted them in green as well. We're going to see them a couple of times more, and the last time we see them, it is going to be quite significant in my deliberations about what it is that we're seeing. So this is those same two houses. You can see them on the map. I've highlighted them in green. And now we're looking at them from the other side. We're looking at them from Whitehall Road, which is the main road there. Behind the houses to the right, you can see some of the Star Maltings buildings, which I've highlighted green on the map. And over in the background, what I've highlighted in green, a little block of houses between where it says Barleycorn and St John's. I believe that's those houses. I know that Shackleton's Fold no longer exists. I know that that the Sunday School building no longer exists, and also that first row of houses between where it says St John's and then St John's Street, that has also been demolished. But Shackleton's, if you came out of Shackleton's Fold and looked left, these houses would have been right there. And actually, the photograph on the right here, the photographer was standing right outside those two houses. So I mentioned this building in my first video as well. This is Whitehall Road School, and it actually is the only building out of everything we've seen on all of those maps. This is the only building that still exists, and it's what I use to be able to accurately pinpoint where Shackleton's Fold used to be. So two views of the school. And in the one on the right, you can see a row of houses behind, and I've highlighted those on the map as well. That's the houses on Kildare Terrace. And we see those houses again. You can see on the map, right at the on the sort of diagonal coming down, but on the right, you can see it, about four houses that I've highlighted. Well, that's the block that we're seeing there on the right of the shot, and the school would be to our right if the photographer had turned around and photographed the school. That is the school there. This is where Whitehall Road and Gelded Road cross over. The fork on the right, where the horse and cart is coming down, is Whitehall Road. The fork on the left is Gelded Road. We've got that triangular shape of buildings in the middle, formed by that X-shaped crossroads. If you look at Shackleton's Fold on the map, and then look at the other end of Shackleton's Fold, that road is called Wortley Lane, and that, if you follow that lane up, then it meets Gelded Road, and I've put a purple arrow showing where that is, and you can see down there. Now this is the earliest photograph, and it dates from probably 1911, and so Shackleton's Fold was actually still standing where this was taken. And had the photographer thought of me 120 years hence and had just turned around and taken a photograph of what they'd seen behind them, then we would have a photograph of Shackleton's Fold. And I'm a bit cross with them that they didn't do that. Anyway, it's what we just have to deal with it, don't we? I've been very lucky to get all of these other photographs. So this is the reason why that Sunday school building was demolished. So in August 1940 there was an air raid, and this is what it looked like. The building was so badly damaged that it had to be demolished. Now, I've highlighted the bit of the school that we can see, and as you can see, part of it kind of juts out a bit onto the pavement, and next to that bit there's a man. Now behind the man you can see a gable end and a chimney, and those two houses that we keep seeing, that's the end of those two houses. I've highlighted that on the map in green at the top of the map. But I've spent a lot of time looking at those houses and at this gable end, and I may be wrong, it may be wishful thinking, but I think that the wall that the man is standing in front of is not the wall of that house. I think the perspective's wrong. I think that that man is standing in front of the back of the first row of Shackleton's Fold houses. If that is so, then that sort of yard of wall is the only bit of Shackleton's Fold that I have photographs of, apart from a few family photographs of people just sitting on chairs in doorways, which you really can't see anything. It's a photograph of the person, not of the house. But that I think could be Shackleton's Fold. And then finally, so you can see Shackleton's Fold on the map, and you can see what I've highlighted in green. So this is a little terrace of back-to-back houses at the Wortley Lane end of St John's Street. And for those of you who are not used to what back-to-backs look like, this is quite common, that you can look at the end, and the end upper floors usually did have a couple of windows, and you can always tell that they're in different houses. And then it was quite common for them to have a couple of shops downstairs as well on the main road, as these ones here do, and then you've got 3 dwellings going away. So the houses on this side are looking out this way, and the houses that are backing onto them directly, they've got their windows and doors looking the other way. So this was if you came out of the alleyway and turned left on Wortley Lane, this is the first thing that you would have seen after these other little sort of industrial type buildings that are there on Wortley Lane. I've put this here so that we can see what all of these rows of houses look like, but also I think I'm going to be drawing upon this when I move on and I'm looking at documents and getting information about the houses in Shackleton's Fold, but trying to imagine what they actually look like. And I think this is going to help me to do that. Certainly I'll be keeping it in mind, and I've got a few other photographs that of back-to-backs that I'm going to try to see if I can pick details from them and use them. So that's it. That's all my photos. And what we've done is we've had a little tour, and this is what we've seen. So I'm really pleased with the number of photographs that I was able to find, and I do feel that if I were transported back to 1930, that I would be able to walk around and recognise, well, I would recognise quite a few people, I think, but also I would recognise this area and the buildings, and I'll be able to find my way around. So these are all the details of the photographs and maps, and obviously the links here don't work. It is a requirement of the National Libraries of Scotland that to be able to use their maps, that you are supposed to show a link that will take you to the whole map. Obviously, I've just used a section of it, and in order to comply with that, that's why I've made the blog post. So if you go to the blog post that's linked below this video, then you will find actual workable links. I hope you found this useful. I am aware that very few people are going to have the same obsession with Shackleton's Fold that I have, but you know, my hope is that this might give you some ideas of using a map and finding photos and dropping them in so that you can see exactly what was in the various spots on the map. It's something I'd had in mind to do for quite a long time, and now finally I've done it. So I hope you found it useful. If you have, and if you've got a YouTube account, then please like the video, even subscribe to my channel if you wanted to. As you can see, I'm not prolific. I've only done 3 videos so far. And please share it with anyone who you think might appreciate it. And thank you for watching to the end. Hope you've enjoyed. Thank you very much. Bye.